Hold it! Stay right there. What are you waiting for? Kill them! Kill them both! Now, wait a minute. Is it money you're after? I'll give you as much as you want.
May the saints forgive you, because I won't.
Hey, you're listening to another episode of Threshold Saints. This is Jin the Ninja, and enjoy the show.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jigoku. Now then, Jigoku, mate.
How's it going? Hey, I'm Jigoku. I guess. Well, I go by a bunch of different pseudonyms online. Jigoku Cake is the one I use on Twitter. I started my Twitter a few years back, basically just to harass journalists, and I just ended up posting a bunch of stuff. I started posting things about like Buddhism and Shinto and various forms of mysticism, just like, I don't know, less than 2 years ago. But people seem to really like it, so I've been posting a lot more.
Yeah, as I told you pre-recording, you're literally one of my favorite Twitter personalities, top 3 for me, for sure. And you have really good political takes as well as the Buddhism. So, and you've had a couple viral tweets. So yeah, we'll shout that out because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's always like the ones that I fire off on the toilet. It's just like stuff that I don't put any thought into that ends up going viral.
So what would you say? How would you characterize your relationship with esoteric Buddhism or Japanese mysticism, like just in your own words, just like, or your story, however much or however little you want to explain? Just give us like a little idea of, and then map out like where we're going to go. I think we're going to discuss Wisdom Kings. That's what General Lee told me. So yeah, I'll just let you kind of go with it.
Well, I've been, I guess, like a practitioner of I guess, like a spiritual practitioner for a few years now. I have like a home altar, but as far as like practice goes, it's I'm very, very basic. Most of this stuff is just I just do it on as a hobby, basically, just academic studying of different scriptures and different fields within under the Buddhism umbrella.
That's very cool. For me, I don't have as clearly not any experience with Japanese Buddhism, but of course, just having like a Chinese background and kind of like looking at how modified some of the practices have become in the diaspora, and then also looking at like the stuff that is from Japan, there's a lot of similarity. And so I always took great inspiration from the preservation of like the esoteric practices still in Japan. I know it's not like widespread, but at least it still exists to some degree. Whereas in Hong Kong obviously exists, but like in China, it's much more Tibetan oriented towards that. So I just think that's very interesting.
Yeah. Jigoku, is there much difference between the Japanese Buddhism and the Chinese?
I'm not too familiar with the Chinese esoteric stuff, but as far as I'm aware, the guy who started esoteric practices, well, one of the main guys who started, there's a few of them, but the most famous one is a guy named Kobo Daishi, or Kukai. And he, the Shingon esoteric Buddhism, which is the primary form of esoteric Buddhism in Japan, was basically formulated by him and his mentor, who was of the Vajra lineage. So it has definite elements of Chinese Buddhism. It's it's basically a continuation of Chinese esoteric Buddhism, but with a lot of the creative juices of Kukai and the people who came after him kind of instilled into it. So there's a lot of overlap, but it's also kind of, I would probably guess, a different animal.
I totally agree with that, and I think that's I think that's one of the strengths of Buddhism, that it can be locally modified and still like very much functional, very much like work. You can still, even like I don't know, obviously understand everything. Like you have to have a stronger text-based practice with those texts, but there's a lot that I can like look at and sort of glean from and understand, like, okay, this has a relationship to this Nuwari or Tibetan deity, and then or Chinese deity, and yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the overlap, but I think you're totally right that it's definitely localized and very cool in that way.
Yeah, that's one of the fun things that I've noticed. So I've been reading into Tibetan stuff recently, and just seeing how the different ideas and concepts and deities and everything overlap with each other is very fascinating. It's one of my favorite things to look into.
Yeah.
No, I love the work you've been doing on Yamataka or Vajrabhairava lately, because I just think that is so fascinating, because we obviously class him as like one of the highest, sometimes if you're Galugpa, Galugpa, that you would say he's like the highest or the highest father tantra. But then, like for me, like Nyingma, we don't say that. He's just like, he's like an Anuttara yoga deity, but he's not necessarily the apex deity. So I think that's really interesting. And then you have that figure in Japan, but he's a wisdom king. Not that it's not like demotion, but it's just like a different categorization of the tantras.
So, what is a wisdom king?
So Wisdom King, they are, I guess you could say, wrathful deities. They're not all wrathful. The vast majority of them are. But it's a special categorization given to certain figures within the esoteric Buddhist pantheon who represent the powers of the Buddhas, basically. That's the easiest way to understand it.
Right.
So you could say the abilities, like certain features of the Buddhas, particularly those that deal with things like subjugation, or defense, protection, exorcism. These are deities that are very often invoked in exorcism rituals, things like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
The original Sanskrit, I think, is Vidyarajas.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I was wondering if I was remembering that right.
Totally right.
Yeah, and they're present. They're very, very present in Tibetan Buddhism as well. But there's different classifications. I think Japanese Buddhism uses there's usually like 8 main ones and 5 of like the highest ones. But the classification's always shuffled around depending on like which particular sub school you're talking about. So it gets a little wiggly.
No, 100%. And I had to tackle this exact thing when I did my own tantra series, just because it's so text dependent. I think people don't necessarily, or mandala dependent. Sometimes it's not even text dependent. Sometimes it just depends on the mandala of that particular, as you know, practitioner or lineage, and they will modify it. And then there'll be a secret teaching that isn't in the text. Yeah, exactly, right. So yeah, who of the wisdom kings like do you find the most fascinating, or just prevalent, or important, or anyone that's caught your eye, or all of them?
So in Japanese esoteric Buddhism, number 1 is always Fudo or Akala. So he's like the head honcho. They consider him basically one of the main emanations of Mahavairochana, and he's so he's like basically the top. He's the head honcho. He's the most powerful. His mantras are invoked for pretty much any purpose whatsoever.
Is that Myo? Did you say then? Good.
I'm sorry. What was that?
Name Fudo-Myo, did you say? Fudo.
Fudo-Myo. Yeah.
Yeah. Fudo-Myo. Right. Okay.
So it's impossible to look into Japanese esoteric Buddhism without seeing him. He's known by his weapons, so he has the noose and the sword. And so to kind of paraphrase Kukai's description of him, he's the highest Buddha who takes the form of a servant and as a guardian. So he's both the top of the pantheon and he's a servant to everybody else in the pantheon at the same time.
Wow.
Which is a very fascinating concept. Second to him, I guess it's debatable, but I would say Aizen is one of the top, Aizen-Myo-o, who it's interesting because there's the classification of the 5 great wisdom kings. Aizen is never part of that top 5, but he's always very present. He's in kind of a lot of esoteric Buddhist temples as kind of a guardian. If he's not the main object of worship for a lot of them. Maybe for a few, but he is very present within esoteric Buddhism. And he's often combined with Fudo, or not often combined with him, but there are records of him, statues and paintings and stuff, of a 2-headed Aizen, which has Aizen and Fudo's heads kind of combined into one figure, which is very interesting. Yeah, 2 heads. Yeah, so if you search for two-headed Aizen, you'll come up with this. But that comes from kind of the Buddhist fascination with opposites and combining things that you wouldn't normally combine. So Fudo is known as the immovable one. He's, I guess you could say, he represents, someone who's not swayed by the passions. He's, immortal, just unharmable. I guess he's really kind of like represents some kind of essence. It's very hard to describe in words, but those are some ones you could use to describe him. Aizen, on the other hand, he's called the passion-stained king. So his skin is red because he's said to be in a state of, he's overwhelmed with compassion and vital energy. And so I guess one of the reasons I'm so interested in him in particular is when you look him up, he's a very kind of imposing figure. He has multiple arms. He's got fangs. He's got like a lion's head on top of his head that's like roaring, and he's get surrounded by flames and stuff. So you're thinking, okay, well, this is like a big, tough, guardian type figure. But then you read, oh no, he's like a love god. He's a god of love. And you're like, okay, that's interesting. So it's very like Fudo, he embodies something very particular, like an aspect of this. And when you combine him and Fudo together, you get these two things that are, at first glance, they're opposites. And they're opposed to each other, but when you put them together, you can see how they're complementary. So that's a very kind of Buddhist type of fascination to have.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm personally also fascinated with both of them. Neither of them are, it depends. Obviously, you know this. It depends on how you understand the lineage teaching of like which Nuwari deities or Bhairavas that they came from or were like the inspiration of their form. So but they're not super practiced, I would say, in Tibetan, but they have like parallels. Maybe that's a good way to say it, parallels, and not necessarily the same, but they exist. Like a call exists, definitely. I've seen like several practice texts and his mantras. He's got 3 mantras that I've seen, and Aizen definitely exists, but he's definitely taken on a much more localized flavor. And I particularly love his like I don't know, his like Tongmi, esoteric, like medieval kinds of like form. And he used to be very popular in China. And I believe, if I remember correctly, Amoga Vajra also used to be quite fond of him.
Yeah, I haven't looked into Amoga Vajra's relationship with him, but that's definitely a thread I want to pull on. I've been doing more research into Amoga Vajra because he's a very, very compelling figure.
Yes.
And I didn't realize how important he was to Chinese Buddhism until I started looking into him.
I think it's very underestimated. Like, even for me, I didn't really, until the last like 2 years, really, it didn't start to click for me. And then I started to see, oh, okay, there's this thread. He's connected to this. He's connected to like the state the Ministry of State Rights, you get Ministry of Buddhism. He just has all these ties and like all these students that went and took his lineage. So I just think that's so fascinating.
And when you look into, one of the fascinating things is also the time frame. So when you look into the time Amoghavajra was around, that was the same time. Like it was either at the same time or right after a lot of these texts are historically considered to have been composed. So he was around, this stuff was being developed around figures just like him. And I think he was actually he was a contemporary of, like, what was the guy's name? The guy who wrote the Vajrabhairava tantras. Lalita Vajra?
Okay, yes.
They were around at the same time. He was living at the same time Amoghavajra was. So you could see there's these super important tantras were being composed around the same time Amoghavajra was alive. And then, figures like Padma Sambhava, Guru Rinpoche,
Yes.
he came, I think, right after Amoghavajra, or maybe
like 100 years, maybe, or maybe like 60 years, 100
yeah.
years. Yeah, let's say 100.
And very soon after him was Kukai came to China and spread the teachings to Japan. So all of this, very important development within the tantric Buddhist tantrism happened in a very short amount of time.
Yes, and in a very interesting area. And like General Lee and I spoke about, it's like Kathmandu Valley, that like kind of like southwest area of China, the southern Tibet, eastern Tibet. There's like so much interesting things in like Indo-Scythians, and just really a convergence of different tantric ideas from India, from Pakistan, from Kyrgyzstan, from all these places, just really converging on one place, and like all practicing with each other, having incredible discourses, as in the story of Ray Lotsawa, sometimes not just discourses, sometimes magical battles.
Sometimes death.
Yeah, a lot of death with him. Yes, a lot of death with him.
That book, by the way, just like a little side tangent, but I'm reading that book, the all-pervading melodious drumbeat, the Ra Lotsawa book.
Yes,
it's like a shonen anime.
Yes, it really is. People don't understand. Buddhism really is the original, it's the OG shonen anime.
Like it's great. I think I'm halfway through it now, but it's a great read so far. Very, very, very interesting stuff, and it's making me, it's endearing me quite a bit to the Tibetan Buddhist stuff.
The Tibetan stuff. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Generally.
Sorry, mate. Just a quick one. Do you think the reason why all the Asian, the different pantheons is so fascinating? Do you think it's because, like you just mentioned, then, Jin, like at that certain area is like a melting pot of different cultures, and they've like combined all their knowledges together, and this is what we've got now. It's just like,
well, yeah, I do think that that is one of the reasons it's so fascinating. Just looking into Japanese religion and spirituality, you got so many different threads coming from different areas. You got Taoism in the form of Onmyodo, which came in from Korea. You got Buddhism coming from China and Korea as well. And then you got the local religions in Japan, and they all kind of merge together and mix and everything. And it's very fascinating. And when you get stuff that kind of fits together just right, it's like lightning in a bottle. It just kind of explodes. And that's kind of what happened with like this whole evolution of tantric Buddhism that we're talking about. It's very much, you get all these ideas that synthesize, and it just kind of takes hold.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, highly recommend that book if anyone's listening wants like a really interesting, I don't know if it's a primer book, but it's definitely interesting. But yeah, my theory with General Lee has been Tantra is kind of the perennial system, maybe. I mean, that's my thinking, is that it is, because it feels there's a way that it's localized, but then it also feels very universal. It feels also like to a lot of like the Western magical systems, a lot of like the Arabic and Persian stuff. It seems like the Tantra stuff actually is more complete. That's just my opinion. But I feel like there's a whole system there. All the layers of meaning are preserved. All the different practices, like low sorcery to Thurgy, it's all preserved. Whereas like a lot of the other kinds of like systems, they have lost meaning. It's been syncretized, and syncretism isn't necessarily bad in my opinion, but it just sometimes you can lose meaning through syncretism.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But yeah, I mean, as far as like, oh, go ahead.
No. I just was going to ask you about. There's a figure who I actually know nothing about other than what you post about him, which is Myoken, who I'd be really interested to hear like your thoughts on it, like a little origin story or anything like that.
Ooh, okay. that I don't know. That might be a whole other podcast, but I can give you like
no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll save that for a different time, because that's
okay, sure.
that spans several religions and probably thousands of years of stuff.
Sound of that. Sound of it. Now I don't know. I'm just about having a quick look into this. What's the connection with the womb realm?
Oh, the womb realm. So the womb realm is that's the what is, I forget, I'm trying to think of the Sanskrit name, Garbhadhatu. I think it's called. So that is from a very early tantric Buddhist text called the Mahavajrabhairava Sutra, and it was basically using that sutra, the Chinese esoteric Buddhists composed this very massive mandala, which they considered to be the structure of the cosmos itself. And it can be read in a lot of different ways. It's composed using different deities. A great many of them are exoteric Buddhist deities, but there's just as many esoteric ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it has the central deity as Mahavajrabhairava, who is the Dharmakaya, basically the universal consciousness is the way I would describe it.
I agree with that. Yeah, I like that.
And so like I said, this is like a map of the cosmos, and it is just filled with lots of different hidden meanings and ways to read it that are just very fascinating. And I would almost say it's kind of like a visual scripture in the way it communicates its ideas. So it is complementary to the Mahavajrabhairava Sutra, but I think by itself it is very, very, very profound in the way it presents the messages.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated with it also generally, and I'll just say I think that is really the strength of Tantra, is that it's both conceptual, and there are so many layers. Like a layperson can look at the mandala, they will get something out of it. Right? I mean, this. It's just so fascinating, and like how deities can be moved and like sort of animated, you could say, in the mandala, and sort of like shifting around depending on activity colors or conceptual ideas or certain parts of the sadhana. It's just so amazing, honestly. I'm sorry, I'm just a big Dharma fan, so I just it's so exciting to talk about it.
Yes, maybe.
Well, going back to a previous topic that we spoke of earlier, you mentioned, was it the Gelugpa sect of Tibetan Buddhism? So one of the things I've been digging into very recently has been the Gelug connection with Japanese esoteric Buddhism.
Yes.
Which, no, they're not directly connected. Like as far as I'm aware, there wasn't like trading of information between these two groups. They're very far apart on the planet, so until very recently probably there wasn't very much connection between these. However, so we spoke of Amoghavajra earlier, the Chinese esoteric Buddhist priest. Amoghavajra is most famous as a sutra translator. He got a bunch of books from India, Nepal, all these regions, and he translated them for Chinese royalty and Buddhists there.
Yeah.
Well, one of his big kind of finds was one of the main texts used in Shingon Japanese esoteric Buddhism, which is the Vajrabhairava Sutra. Yeah. So the Vajrabhairava Sutra is similar to the Mahavajrayana Sutra. It describes a mandala, and it's the diamond realm mandala, and it's considered complementary to the womb realm mandala. So this particular text was notable because, according to Vajrabodhi, who was Amoghavadra's kind of mentor, there was an incredibly long sutra of 100,000 lines, something like that. And this was the full Vajrabhairava Sutra. It's this supposedly this massive text. And the story behind it was that it was received by an anonymous individual who had achieved some form of profound enlightenment, who had gone into an iron stupa somewhere in India. And all of this was transmitted to him by Vajrasattva, or one of the main bodhisattvas. And so Amoghavadraha is very interested in this, supposedly massive tantric text of 100,000 lines. And so he made it one of his missions to reassemble this text. And according to him, there were actually 18 main parts to this text. With the one that he found, the one that's used by the Japanese Shingon, being the very first one. So this is the beginning, the first meeting of the Vajrabhairava Sutra. And it's out of the 18 meetings is what they're called, the different chapters, basically. Now, he listed 18 of them. He wrote the names down, and as well as brief descriptions for each one of them. And this is interesting because number 15 of them is the secret meeting tantra, or as it's known in Sanskrit, the Goya Samaja tantra, yes, which is the main one used by the Gelug sect.
Yes.
So I don't think Amoghavadraha had the full text of this tantra, okay, but he did know at least about it, and he may have read an abbreviated version of it, or an incomplete version or something. So, according to Amoghavadra's notes, the main text used by the Gelug sect is a continuation of one of the main texts used by the Shingon Buddhist sect. So, I think that's very fascinating.
That really is very fascinating, and like we spoke about before, like you do. I mean, well, not you, but Shingon Buddhism has Yamataka, the main deity of Gelugpa is Yamataka. It's just really interesting. And you also have like this focus on Vajrasattva. Obviously, you call him, I think, Vajra Congo. Is that correct?
Congo Sata. Yeah.
Okay, Congo Sata. Excuse me. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. So that is very interesting. And he plays a very important role, I think, now in contemporary Buddhism. Like a lot of everybody from every school really loves that practice. I personally love that practice. I've talked about it before, but he was not. It's hard to find old texts with him that are not Kagyu or Gelugpa. Like it's more uncommon because there's other practices. There's like a Vajradaka, who can be like a rectification or purification practice. And obviously we have like in Nyingma, we have Padmasambhava, so he can be kind of that role. So it's just it's so interesting that there is a lot of mandala similarities, I would say. And I just would want to say, like, when it's called like the 18 meetings, that is a very dialectical, that's like, I think an allusion to like Buddhist dialectics is my personal interpretation of that. I don't know if you disagree or agree or.
No, could you elaborate on that?
Well, how I've always articulated is Tantra has the dialectic inner outer secret, and so a lot of it is right. Like it's the instruction from the text, it's the oral instructions, secret instructions, and then the practice, and then all kind of coalesces into a greater understanding, or greater knowledge, or greater wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
So
think that that's really-
you have like I've noticed that especially that's more of a thing with the Tibetan Buddhism, but it is there within Shingon and other, different forms of Japanese Buddhism as well. But you have like the root texts, they call it.
Yes.
And then you have the cycle of texts, which are the elaborations on the root text, because these
Yes.
texts, these or root texts, these root tantras are so dense with symbolism and layers of information. You can get like like I was reading one commentary and it was like, oh, this has 4 layers of meaning, but then there's other ones. It's like, oh, this has 6 layers of meaning. This has 8 layers of meaning.
Yes.
It just goes out and out, and it seems like it goes on forever. But that's just how they were written to be read. That's how you're supposed to read them.
No, that's
Do you
extremely fascinating. Sorry, go ahead, Generally.
It could be me, this mate, but it sounds almost similar to like how Alistair Crowley with AWAS. Is this not something? Does it not sound similar? Do you know what I mean? Like how Crowley said the Book of the Law through AWAS, and then you've got what you just described. Then Jigoku.
I don't know really anything about Aleister Crowley. That's something I mean I should probably, because that's something that I would be into, just as far as research goes.
That one, Jin.
So, in my opinion, in my opinion, that I think he took everything from Tantra. That's my kind of working thesis right now. And even like the name of like, I said this with NYP when I did the series with him, but like Lamb, that is like 100% comes from Tantra. Like that's you use it as like it's a syllable for food offering, the purification. So it's Lam Bam Yum bum come. Anyways, I won't do it, but that's what you do to give torma cakes. So I just think that there's something that he didn't. And I told you this before, that I don't think he fully understood, because again, just like Jigoku said, there are multiple layers of meaning. Even like someone like me who's been doing it for like over 5 years, like seriously for over 5 years, but I've been a Buddhist for longer. But I don't even have all the meanings myself. So if you're not really serious about it, it's very difficult to penetrate those like inner meanings. And like if you don't have someone who's constantly pointing out instruction or kind of like guiding you, not necessarily like a guru, but it's very helpful to have one. So I don't think that he was able to fully articulate the meanings, if he even understood the full meaning. And I'm not sure that he did, but especially not in a Buddhist way, because a Buddhist way is also conceptual and material at the same time. There's like it's very non-dual, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to go on that long. Jigoku, can you explain how the difference between like at least between like Shingon and Tendai, and if there's any significant differences, just in case anyone's listening who's not like super familiar with Japanese Buddhism, or even esoteric Buddhism, esoteric Japanese Buddhism in general, like how it differs from like Pure Land, or just as much as as little as I want to say.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say that I definitely want to read into Aleister Crowley now that you mentioned that, as especially if I end up finding some good source of material on him, I want to read it with that lens in mind that you had said, where he took a bunch of stuff from Tantra. That might be really fascinating for me. But as far as Japanese Buddhism goes, so it's Japanese Buddhism. I believe it was introduced around the 7th or 8th century, and it was entirely exoteric. So I should just in case there's someone listening who doesn't know, who's starting from zero on this. Esoteric teachings are exoteric are the basic teachings that are more direct, I guess. Well, nothing in Mahayana Buddhism is direct, but they're more direct, and they're usually written as sermons given by Shakyamuni Buddha, the original, who they say is the historical Buddha. When they say historical Buddha, they're referencing Shakyamuni. There are the esoteric texts. Some of them are written as sermons given by Shakyamuni, but
Yes.
The majority of them are written as being given by a different entity. So in the case of the Mahavajrayana text, it's written as a sermon given by Mahavajrayana.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the Tibetan tantras are given by Vajradhara.
Yes. George Arab, all the different ones, 100%.
Yeah, and they're usually, Mahavajrayana and Vajradhara, they're kind of similar ideas. Just, it's different. They differ slightly, but similar kind of ideas of having this. What's essentially the idea of the historical Buddha, who was the teacher who's giving you the mystic law of how reality works, but given like a cosmic proportion. So this is the source of the cosmic source of that information, giving it to you directly. So it's one of my. I wrote an essay recently on my blog Spiral Seas where I talk about there was like kind of an idea of the large and the small being non-dual, and that's kind of feeds into that. But that's a tangent for a different time. So Japanese Buddhism started off, it was entirely exoteric, and gradually people started bringing in the esoteric texts, with the two of the big ones being Kukai, or Kobodaishi, who started the Shingon sect. And he's, if you want to say, there's different people who kind of lay claim to the title of Japanese version of Merlin.
Right.
But one of those people is Abe no Seimei, who is the Onmyodo Taoist guy. And then really, Kukai.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Say that. No, I just want to say I'm a huge Abe no Seimei fan, and I love those two films, the Onmyoji films. Anyways, I'll just let you finish. I apologize. I'm a big fan of his.
He's still a popular figure there. Everybody, like a lot of people know about Abe no Seimei. Mm-hmm. But Kukai is kind of a similar figure to where he was kind of considered. He was regarded as a guy who could do extraordinary supernatural feats. So he was one of the big ones, and then the other one was a guy who was one of his contemporaries, and the two actually knew each other. They had met in their travels in China when they were getting these esoteric texts. It was a man named Saicho, or Dangyo, and he was one of the people who started the Tendai sect. So Tendai, the difference, I would say the main difference between Tendai and Shingon is that Tendai places just as much value on the exoteric texts as they do on the esoteric texts.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess they put more value on the exoteric, being that their main, like the highest of all the scripture to them is the Lotus Sutra.
Yes.
So the Lotus Sutra, they say, has, and I agree with this to a certain extent, that the Lotus Sutra is kind of the foundational. It has a lot of the foundational theory of the Buddhist forms of Buddhism that came after the composition of that text. So it lays a lot of the groundwork for a lot of these esoteric ideas, and the book, the Lotus Sutra in itself, has a lot of esoteric interpretations in it, which makes it a very fascinating text to read.
Yes, I totally agree. And it is a very fascinating text. And there are layers of meaning in it for tantric practitioners. So people shouldn't sleep on that text just because it's a more direct transmission kind of teaching.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so one of the biggest one of the really big figures in Japanese Buddhism is Nichiren.
Yes.
Nichiren started he didn't start the Nichiren sect. That started, I believe, after his passing. But he was actually a student of Tendai, and he was frustrated with he had studied a lot of there was a teacher who went by the name Master Tiantai. I think his name is Ziyi, was his actual name. He kind of systematized a lot of the interpretations of Tendai of the Lotus Sutra, and Nichiren had studied a lot of his writings and teachings, and he had grown frustrated with the Tendai sect because he's saying, like, well, look, our old teachers said that this was the text that we should be focusing on. This was the highest wisdom. So why are we doing all this esoteric stuff? You know, like this is like we're doing all this like stuff that Shingon does too, and you know where's the respect for the Lotus Sutra? And so he had kind of blamed a lot of the events that were happening in Japan at the time, different tragedies and the invasion of the Mongols and things like that, on people ignoring the Lotus Sutra essentially.
Okay.
And so his stuff is very entertaining to read, by the way, because if you read Kukai stuff, Kukai was a very academically minded kind of guy.
Yes.
He was very interested in, you know, symbolism, explaining things very systematically and academically. Nichiren is he's very much more fire and brimstone in the way that he communicates, and his texts are a little bit, you know, they're less organized. They're not as, you know, academic as Kukai. But his stuff is it has a lot of character to it, which makes his stuff very interesting to read. So that's kind of the idea of Nichiren Buddhism, was we're going to be putting the Lotus Sutra first. Everything else is kind of supplemental at best.
I love that. Yeah, thank you.
Just a quick one. Is it just, I'm probably going to watch this name, Tsuno Dashi, the Horned Great Master. Is he part of the Lotus Sutra?
So, sorry, what was the name again?
It is Tsuno Dashi.
Tsuno Daishi.
Yeah.
That doesn't ring a bell. I probably read it somewhere, but no, it's not coming to me right now.
Horned Great Master. Apparently, he's meant to be.
How do you spell that?
Tsuno Daishi.
Here we go. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So this was a guy I didn't recognize the name, but when I Googled it and I saw the figure of the yaksha, or the Oni figure, I immediately recognized it. Yeah, so I don't know too much about him, but I know he was one of the head guys of Tendai for some time. And the legend around him was that he could transform himself into this kind of Oni creature to like defeat evil spirits and tame them, you know, subjugate them and things like that. So you can still get these too in Japan. They would make ofuda, which are like the paper amulets with him on them. And yeah, I think that's a tradition that the Tendai sect still has going today.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, holy moly, I forgot about this guy.
It's a vast pantheon. I can't fault you for, because I generally sneak these questions in for me, and I'd be like, oh, do I even know that? But you know, so I totally understand.
Yeah, no, that's a good one to bring up. Yeah, I recommend people Google that just to see what this figure looks like. Like the drawings of him are just wild. They're like super cool. But so yeah, so you had asked me also about Pure Land and their connection. Well, I should finish talking about Nichiren. So Nichiren, his stuff does have esoteric elements in it.
Yes.
But I don't think he was doing that to be like, oh, I should add esoteric elements into this because reasons. And that was just because those things had become so ubiquitous at the time that totally. and he had studied the, you know, esoteric elements too as part of his basic studies as a Tendai monk. So that was just, you know, part of Buddhism. So like for instance, he has the Nichiren, the main object of worship for Nichiren Buddhism is the Gohonzon, which is a mandala, which, you know, it's esoteric in nature. That's, you know, that's a big thing in esoteric Buddhism is mandalas.
Yeah.
So their main object of worship is a mandala with, you know, several layers of meaning, just like any other mandala. And their main form of practice is a mantra, which is, you know, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. It's a mantra. So there are definite esoteric elements within Nichiren Buddhism, despite him, you know, trying to go back to a more exoteric focus.
That's a great way to.
Pure Land Buddhism. So Pure Land is also interesting because both of the main patriarchs for like the two main Pure Land schools, I believe both of them actually were originally part of Tendai as well. So you had Honen, who started Jodoshu, the first Pure Land sect, I believe. I don't know if that's the first, but I think it is. And then after him, it was Shinran started Jodo Shinshu, which is the most popular. It has, out of any Buddhist sect in Japan, has the most active practitioners.
Okay.
So both of them knew a lot about esoteric Buddhism, and if you read Shinran's writing, you can tell there are some kind of esoteric elements to it. He was aware of a lot of these concepts, but as far as it goes, I think Pure Land is pretty much exoteric.
No, I think that's totally fair. I think that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, the esoteric aspects to it are very minimal. I think the most esoteric aspect of it is just like the Nichiren sect. They practice mantra. The Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu that's their main practice as well. So very similar to Nichiren in that regard. Although Nichiren despised the Pure Land sect, he actually his original kind of manifesto, as I would call it, was a condemnation of the Pure Land sect. So that's interesting.
Do you think so? In Chinese Buddhism, I've only read superficial scholarship on it, not like in depth. But my understanding is Pure Land was definitely more of a populist religion in the terms of, obviously it's the Amitabha cults or cultus, and it offers the lay person a kind of salvation in a way through lay practices. And then we do have Tiantai in China, but it's not, it's like it has more esoteric obviously elements as well. It's not just like strictly, it's not like Nichiren where he deliberately tried to pare it down, even though he maintained some of the esoteric or exoteric, no, esoteric, excuse me, esoteric elements. So no, I think that's interesting. Do you think that there's anything similar in Japanese, like where the, like the floating world or the courtesans or the, different Buddhisms attract different kinds of people, I think is what I'm trying to say or ask.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's a huge thing. So you're talking about Jodo Shinshu and Nichiren Buddhism. Both of those sprung up in the Kamakura period. And around that time, there was a lot of dissatisfaction with the current Buddhist schools and the main ones. And so the main Buddhist schools like Tendai and Shingon were heavily ingrained in the in politics and with different politicians, feudal lords, things like that. The emperor, just all this stuff. And to a certain extent, they had grown very decadent. Mm-hmm. And people would, if you read the works from patriarchs like Nichiren and Shinran, a lot of the things they talk about is this idea like that monks at the time were not following the precepts. They weren't acting like monks. They were just going out and abusing their power and, probably getting drunk and hooking up with women or whatever. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But they don't usually have like examples, but they just talk about like, oh, the monks aren't they aren't obeying the precepts. The monks are corrupt. This is a thing that's over and over again that these people have been talking about at the time. So there was a general dissatisfaction, it seems, within the populace. And when you see like Nichiren and Pure Land practices, they are very kind of they're not like esoteric practices where you need to devote a lot of time to them. You need to like do a lot of studying and meditation and things like that. You just need like the basic practices for both Nichiren and Pure Land is saying their main mantra Nam-myoho Renge-kyo or Namo Amida Butsu. As long as you're doing that, you can practice it. That's like the only qualifications as far as practice goes. So they were very like populist in that regard, as they're very accessible to the average person, and that's why they grew very, very large during that time. And they're still the largest. Nichiren and Dodo Shinshu are the two largest, most widely practiced schools in Japan.
Yes, so sorry to interrupt. I know you're on a roll, a mint roll as well, I may add. The monks, are they forbidden to be involved with women as drink?
Well, yeah, generally, yeah. Generally, the monks are celibate.
Right.
There is, you can like look up different histories of things like monks in Japan finding loopholes and stuff in the system.
Loopholes.
Yeah. So, well, not really loopholes. It's more like just changing the way the rules are supposed to work, just so they could have sex with other dudes most of the time.
Oh, I was not expecting that. But crazy. It is.
Yeah.
We're all human, aren't we? So.
Also, on the higher tantric vows. No, sorry, generally. I just will say in the higher tantric vows, your relationship with the precepts, I don't want people to misinterpret this, but it does change. I'm not saying it's degenerate. I'm just saying that when they become a higher level tantric practitioner, sometimes those relationships with the precepts have a different meaning and a different understanding. So you're more able to have flexibility with your diet, with your sexuality, with your just how you interact with the outside world. But this is only for people who are extremely, like, this is like high level things. Then this is the one problem with Tantra, is that there will be the monks who do it, and like Naropa, who was surrounded by like beautiful women his whole time he lived at the monastery, and he ate meat and he drank alcohol, and he, that was his thing. But then you also have like the lower monks who do not have that realization, and then they tend to emulate the higher monks, right? So then you sort of get a culture of debauchery, but that's not really what Tantra is. And I think that's one of the misconceptions. And also, just to speak to Jigoku's point, is that you do have skillful means, which sometimes means that you get to stretch and maybe bend the rules to suit your sadhana at that time. So I don't know. I think that's very interesting, though.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I guess in this particular case that I'm talking about, it was definitely them more of saying like, oh, well, the text says this, and if you interpret it this way, then maybe we could, have a little bit of leeway here.
Right. No, that's totally fair.
Yeah. But no, that I do think that's I mean, that's what you're talking about is more in line with Tibetan Tantra.
Yeah.
That stuff. I mean, that stuff is like the kind of baseline idea of that is with in there with the Japanese stuff if you look for it, but it's not as big of a part of it as it is for like Tibetan stuff.
Okay.
Like I know like the text we were talking about earlier, the Goya Samaja Tantra, that's like a big theme of that, which is one of the reasons why it's they won't have you just read the text right away if you're if you're
100%. And that cycle has like a lot of very interesting supplementary practices, and like the astrological component is quite it's very psychedelic. Like if you're not prepared to like engage with it as like not a higher level but just an intermediate practitioner, it can be very challenging for sure, because it's conceptually at face value, it's very challenging. But once you kind of let go of the form, yes, it's easier. You're not so, you can think of things as conceptual ideas. It doesn't necessarily have to be real. So, but yes, you're totally right. It is a pretty wild text.
You're back from making lemonade there, generally.
Sort of, yes, I'm not.
Sorry, what was that?
half and half. Yeah, I'm back now.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say actually, to continue this particular topic, I said that some of those, I guess, you could call them like more somewhat antinomian themes within like certain tantric practices. I said that they were kind of present within the Japanese ones.
Mhm.
So it's mostly within. There's a text called the Rishukyo, and I mentioned earlier that according to Amoghavajra, there were the full Vajra Peak Sutra was 18 meetings, with Goya Samaja being one of those. So this text, the Rishukyo, is supposedly an abbreviated version of the sixth meeting. So it's also closely related to Goya Samaja theoretically. And I need to look into this more because I've only read just a little bit about it, so I don't want to talk about, I don't have too much explanation of it. But apparently, one of the reasons why the guy from Tendai, the Saicho, and Kukai, the guy who started Shingon, one of the reasons that their friendship eventually soured was over that text. I guess Saicho wanted to get Kukai's commentary on that text, and Kukai would not give it to him for reasons that are not immediately clear to me. I guess he didn't think that Saicho had the level of learning that he was comfortable with. So this kind of topic that we're talking about is actually one of the reasons why there was a falling out between these two guys. And that text in particular was actually, compared to the other ones, it was more highly guarded. So they would not let a new practitioner read that text. So very similar to what we were talking about with Goya Samaja.
Yes, that totally makes sense. And like, as I think you did a whole thread about, like, a very fascinating thread, people should check it out, about just like how the practices can be not just misunderstood but misused. Like, you can go with them you can practice them with low desires if you're just like approaching it like magic, or you can approach it more in a theurgic Buddhist way, like more of an internal practice. So I think that's a big, I mean, at least for Tibetan Buddhism, that's been like a big theme for me, is that, like, how do you understand, how do you look at them? Do you look at them as like a way to achieve worldly goals? But there's also that thing where sometimes worldly goals can also be dharmic goals. So there's like that very nebulous kind of, it's not always clear. So I totally understand the reason why there are restricted like texts and restricted categories of text. Like, I totally get it now. It's taken me a couple of years, but for sure. No, I that's a very fascinating history.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as oh crap, I had a great thing. I was going to jump off of what you just said into something else, but I
No, that's okay.
it just fell out of my head. Oh crap.
What? No, don't worry about it. If you remember it, just shout. Just jump
okay,
in.
I remember it now actually. So in Kukai's commentary, and so this is present in the Mahavajracana Sutra, but Kukai elaborates on it. The kind of urge to search for worldly goals, achieve worldly goals through the Dharma, through Buddhist teachings, is actually an early stage of kind of proceeding towards the mind of enlightenment. It's a kind of beginner's stage.
Yes.
So that is considered kind of part of the entire process in there. It's not, of course, not the end process, but that's a kind of jumping off point.
No, that's been like, that's also been my experience. It's also been what I've learned, what I've read, how I understand things now, is that it is in the initial part of the process. It's just that some of the mantras are so powerful, and then if someone gets a hold of a secret mantra, especially in the medieval time when the mantras would have really been secret, they can be used for negative purpose, which injures your karma more. And then what happens is also the efficacy of the mantra can be diminished. That's kind of a thought in Tibetan Buddhism, is that if too many people have access to the extra secret mantras, usually there are multiple mantras per deity. I'm sure you already know that. So the more secret a mantra, the more it can be disempowered through negative purpose. That's kind of the idea.
Okay. Yeah. I get that. But as far as like, so okay, this is going to get a little weirder, but as this was something I wanted to ask you about actually, because it was something that I've been thinking about reading of course, the book about Ra Lotswawa. How the idea of magic works. So you're talking about spells that can theoretically kill somebody, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But these are done through the work of presumably Buddhist entities, things that would be normally theoretically endeared to the Dharma and towards dharmic ends.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I understand it, generally the like a magic, like some kind of magic that you use, or like an incantation, if you want to get something done, it has like it's not going to get done unless there's a certain karmic power behind it. There has to be some kind of form of causation that would cause it to happen. You can't just like make something happen on its own.
No, that's a very good way to describe it. Like a very good way. I think in terms of, sorry, generally, go ahead.
No, I was saying with like intentional, like with intent. Obviously, you want to do something to that extent, you would have to specifically be intentional.
So it has to be intentional, but then also, like Jigoku's saying, there has to be like a karmic connection to what you're doing. So there's also an idea that you can build up the prayoga of a mantra by practicing it. So if you're like Ra Lotswawa, say that's who we're talking about. So if he's doing the Vajrabhairava mantra like thousands and thousands of times in a carnal ground, he's building up his ritual potential to use that mantra for many purposes, and also his karma, because the recitation of the mantra builds also your karma in one way of thinking, if you're doing it properly. Now there are ways to do it improperly, but in one way of thinking, if you're really doing the practices. Now I think the interesting thing about Ra Lotswawa is he's not necessarily considered to be like a high lama at the end, like when he passes away, he's kind of a controversial figure for several hundred years after. So I think it's a question. I think it's a question of like, why was he able to quell so many Dharma teachers, not just Buddhists, but also Bhairava tantric teachers and whoever else he was meeting in Nepal, shamans, whatever. So, sorry, go ahead.
Well, the idea in the book that seems to present is that these people who end up being killed by his magic, they were people they were teachers of the Dharma and they were practitioners and things like that, but they end up kind of getting greedy or having like they get overtaken by the passions and kind of corrupted in that way. And when Ra Lotswawa's when his rituals and incantations do them in, it's actually not just him doing it, but it's kind of the consequences of their own karma, their own karmic, the karma that they had built up prior to that.
I think I agree with that interpretation, and I know exactly, like, I think where it becomes complicated, because then like one of the people who's able to repel him is the Sakya Treason at the time, I forget his name, who uses the dual wielding Vajrakalaya practice. So if you have accomplished a high level of Vajrakalaya practice that is related to Vajrasattva, especially in the Sakya tradition. So I guess I look at it more as in like, what is the relationship to the people to their own practices, and then the Sakya Treason was able to repel him. But you're right, and then also Vajrabhairava is associated with death, obviously, because he is the slayer of death, Yamataka, and it's a black or blue black practice, so it's a very powerful in the karma karma family of Buddhas. So there's something really fast, or Vajra family. I don't know why I said karma family, Vajra family. So it's very powerful. So I agree with you that there has to be, but it also depends on the mindset of the person doing it. But maybe that's wrong view. Maybe your interpretation is the better one. Maybe it's he was doing it. He was just a vehicle for Dharma. The feats, the siddhas he was able to accomplish are all through his karmic connection. But I just think he's not considered to be necessarily a Mahasiddha still. I mean, there's definitely Galagpa, definitely obviously venerates Vajrabhairava the most, so he is considered like a Mahasiddha in that. But
Okay, gotcha.
I think it depends on perspective. I think that's such a tantric idea, context and perspective. It really matters, like your view of things, who's doing it, who's but I agree with you. I think that there was a lot of corruption. I don't know if maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's the essence of the story, is that Ra Lotswawa was just a vehicle to quell all the corruption that was taking place at the time.
I mean, that's kind of how it presents it. I mean, you have there's a scene, a very important scene, kind of early in the story where he's visited by Hayagriva, who I know you guys have talked about on this podcast prior. But Hayagriva actually comes down to him, and it's just basically people there's I guess I think it was during a time where he was having second thoughts about using his abilities to kill people. And Hayagriva was basically, it was just no, there's sometimes it's appropriate, trust me.
No,
I guess that's the gist of it.
No, absolutely. And that's again interesting because Hayagriva and Vajrabhairava have a very interesting kind of they're sort of, just to take it back to the original kind of when you were talking about the wisdom kings like Aizen and Fudo, they kind of have that relationship as well. Hayagriva is more of a taming deity, and Vajrabhairava is obviously more of a subjugating deity, a more destroying deity. So that's also very interesting. But definitely Hayagriva has associations with many war deities, Mongolian and Tibetan. He has many, he's got the 27 butchers in his retinue, and there's something really interesting there. It's so hard for me to talk about because I haven't quite figured out how I want to formulate this exact discussion. But I think it's so fascinating that you brought it up, and I'm with you. I'm with you that there can be time and place and karmic repercussions that people can definitely receive from the practices, but I always try and de-emphasize using them for that, because I think that sometimes people will get the wrong idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I understand it, and I guess this is a big theme in the Vajrabhairava tantras themselves, is the idea that a person who is an accomplished master in the Dharma, a very high level, is going to be necessarily more qualified to know when to use such powerful magic.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it's also really important to note that in the Vajrabhairava tantras, Vajrabhairava is not in and of himself an activity deity. So that gets assigned to Yama Dharma Raja. So Yama, actually the god of death, with Varahi, so not Vajravarahi, but just Varahi, becomes the activity deity of that mandala. Or it can be Rakta Yamari or Krishna Yamari, depending on school. But I think that's really interesting that, I think that, I don't know, it's so fascinating. I think it's a paradox. It's one of those weird tantric paradoxes that, yes, the practices, the wrathful practices in particular, can be used for wrathful means and wrathful purpose. And who uses them, when they use them, how they use them, on whom they use them, I think it all matters. And yes, I think Buddhist sorcery is very much karmically minded. And so that's why I always try and de-emphasize it, maybe for better or worse, just because I think that without a strong understanding of karma, maybe it's better for people to think that that's not the case. that people don't approach it in that way. But maybe that's just me being like very, trad and not like living in the now, or not living being
No,
very
no, definitely. I think it's very like I think I'm very safe in saying do not attempt any of those spells, any kind of spells
That's
like
what I
these.
mean. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody listening to this, like, there's like a 99.9% chance that you're not qualified to do any of these kind of spells. So just don't do it.
Don't do it.
It's going to end very badly for you.
Yes, and that's the other thing. I think that the karmic injury, if for misusing them, is considered to be so great. Like, obviously in the Vajrabhairava tantras, it's described pretty ferociously, like the repercussions. So I personally, just don't do it. But it's obviously an interesting conceptual discussion.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's I mean, if you're talking, it's a big part of esoteric Buddhist history too. I mean, I had that tweet that went kind of viral a few times now, actually, where it was it was on a Wikipedia page about Adavaka, the Daigen Suimyo, another wisdom king. They had used one of his rituals to curse Franklin Roosevelt. And Franklin Roosevelt died 3 months later. He just like was in his office and just croaked. I mean, it is like in the history, and like with the Mongols too. I guess there was like an Aizen-Myo ritual that they used that's like got credit for the storm that messed up the Mongol army.
Yes, I'm somewhat familiar with that story. I think that it makes a lot of sense. Like, not that I'm an Aizen practitioner. Sorry, generally, go ahead.
It sounds crazy. It's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. But yeah, I think that makes sense for Aizen. I think with his like lion hat. I mean, not that I understand it in a Japanese way, but just looking at it from more of like my Tibetan perspective, and then seeing it, okay, I understand this can be used for this, this can be used for this. He has like I don't want to call it alchemical kind of connotation, but there's something in that vein that's there. So he's like, he can wield the elements. That makes sense. Okay. He repels the ships. That makes sense. So yeah, absolutely. Buddhist sorcery is amazing. I think personally, I'm not saying that it's not real. Definitely, it's totally real. I personally think the thing about FDR is very fascinating, possibly very true. Use things for good purposes. Just go with things for the high-minded desire, not low.
Yeah. And like I said, don't do any of these black magic rituals because you're gonna get screwed up.
Yeah, 100%.
You're gonna throw up I think like the Vajrabhairava tantras are like, yeah, you're gonna like throw up blood and go insane and then die.
Yeah, exactly. And like there's, I know in the
it's in the wrong hands, and then no, it's just like I said, there, mate. Something so powerful in the wrong hands can be fucking devastating, can't it?
Yeah, it's destructive for other people and for the person involved, but doubly for the person involved.
Yeah, 100%. And Vajrabhairava is known to be very corrosive. Like, he has like that because it's death energy, right? So it's like you're engaging, if you want to call it the abyss, like that's where Vajrabhairava would be, like the slayer of death, right? Like he exists in that kind of conceptual hell realm. So yeah, it can be a very corrosive, like force. That's why like in a lot of the Nyingma termas, they focus on first you learn Hayagriva, then you learn Vajrakilaya, then you learn Vajrabhairava, and then you can move on to like an Anuttara Yoga deity like Chakasambhara or Vajrayogini. But I think that's really fascinating that, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just, I think, yeah, he can be very corrosive. I think that the black practices are like super powerful, like almost overwhelmingly powerful. And yeah, people should be really careful with that. Do red practices. That's my advice. Do manifesting practices.
Yeah, most of the as far as like if you look at the different mantras that are recommended to like lay followers of like Shingon, they're pretty much just like meant as like protective mantras.
Yes.
They're not cursing anybody. It's just stuff where it's like, good health, wishing for good health, good success in marriage,
Mm-hmm.
No, so yeah,
100%.
you're not going to find any of that in like the lay followers handbooks for sure.
No, and but it's we should just say before we close it out that I totally get it. I'm probably a little pearl clutching when it comes to like Buddhist sorcery in the sense of like explaining it like really like how powerful it is, but it is a really amazing thing. And like if you are attracted to Dharma, like just start out, do Vajrasattva. That's what I always say. So you will find the magic in that, and doing that purification practice is just so amazing. So start small. Don't aim for the Vajrabhairava.
Well, one thing I've noticed. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Oh, one thing I've noticed that actually does work, and you can, and it's not even like a magical thing, really. It's say you're like in you have a girlfriend or you have a spouse, and you have an argument, you feel yourself getting heated or something, you're gonna say something you don't want to say. If you just like if you picture in your mind Aizen-Myo-o, and then just like think about his mantra, or just say his mantra or something like that, you're gonna do like a 180. Like it will just reset your mind, and it's not even, you don't even have to like look at the mystical side of this, but just the psychological effect of doing mantra is like it's crazy. It's very powerful. So it's I recommend I recommend that side of it for sure.
Oh no, 100%. It's both. It's all the layers, right? It's like psychological, it's spiritual, it's biological, all of that, 100%. I think we are gonna call it. Jigoku, why don't you tell everybody? Thank you so much for doing this. It was like fucking amazing, I have to say, to like speak with you and like have people hear kind of the story of Japanese esoteric Buddhism. I think it will be really mind-blowing for a lot of people. I think they have really no idea how cool it is. And I think you explained it like amazingly well. So thank you so much. And if you want to just tell people like where everybody can find you and plug anything you want to plug.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You could find me on Twitter. It's Jigoku Cake. And I have a Substack, which I don't post on too much these days, but I do update occasionally. It's called Spiral Seas. So if you just search for Substack Spiral Seas, that'll come up. And I have, you can find a link in my Twitter account to this, and I have a Gumroad page, and on Amazon I have some of them. I have some Buddhist texts that they're public domain ones that I edited and put into hardcover format with some AI generated artwork that I kind of tweaked.
Nice.
So that's under the brand name Hungry Ghost Books.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
So you can find those on Amazon. I have one of them is called Infinite Light. It's the 3 Pure Land Sutras. So if you're interested in Pure Land Buddhism, it's a good one for beginners actually. If you're looking to read Buddhist sutras and you want to get into like Mahayana Buddhism, that's a very good beginner text. So it's the three main Pure Land Sutras in that one. And then I have a book. It's a biography on Nichiren, about Nichiren, a Buddhist prophet. And I also included one of his big works, his big manifesto, Risho and Kokuron. So that's in there as well. And yeah, you can find that on Amazon and also on Gumroad.
Hey, this is Jin the Ninja, and if you enjoyed the show, you can check out more episodes on Spotify and Anchor, and you can check me out on Twitter at Wukong Reborn, WUKONG Reborn, and on Instagram at Threshold Saints. And there's a link tree in the show notes, so you can check out all my appearances and my shows to date.